My name is Dr. Yehia, and I'm a founder of EGYPS International Consultancy. I walk through engineering, commercial, and managerial roles throughout oil and gas companies worldwide. And during my experience, I found out that there are 6 areas of concern, 6 areas to focus on, 6 areas to put your attention to when you're managing your project procurement in your organizations. After all, spending on goods and services purchased from another organization can represent up to 70% of company total cost. Business leaders have long known that small improvement in procurement can lead to significant improvement in the bottom line. But what do we have next? How we measure it? Tell me how you measure me and I'll tell you how I perform. Usually we measure it by savings, sometimes not cashable. Single-minded focus on price, which creates tension with suppliers, restrict their ability to innovate, and make collaboration difficult. And there is no any single measurement on schedule.
Any questions?
What did you benchmark when you calculated the profit of 25%, the reduction in cost? So what did you benchmark?
So we selected the contracts. So we applied the system not for all the contract, not the project. So we select this selected contracts, and for this base, we basically modeled how this situation affected in terms of project execution, how it affected this contract particularly. So we extrapolated similar performance on the rest of the contracts.
For the same company?
For the same company, yes.
Especially COVID-19 raised a major risk about continuity of the supply chain, and this will affect the control procurement process. So what are the countermeasures are done to manage the risks about supply chain happening with COVID-19?
The system has been developed actually prior to COVID, prior to the pandemic. But in terms, I would say that the system is considered a collaboration, and strategic collaboration with the suppliers. So the countermeasure is that the client and supplier work as one team. It's like co-located team. Okay, if we work remotely, of course, it cannot be located in one place. But it's considered an integrated team, and which helps actually to reduce the interfaces between client and contractor, so transferring the information is smoothened and streamlined the information flow.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have a question for me. Do you develop a customized software, or you are using any specific commercial software for supply chain management like SAP or Oracle SCM, or any system of enterprise resource management, ERP?
So for the system, we didn't develop yet any particular software, but we are using currently what is client has, is we are trying to integrate. Basically, this is the processes. We are trying to optimize and streamline the processes within the organization. So we use the digital software and digital solutions this company have.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
in Korea, Egypt, Houston, and lastly UAE. He now is directors of projects engineering and integrity at Remark.
Thank you, Doctor, for a nice presentation about procurement, because it very much was what I'm going to address today. When we talk about successful projects, if I ask anybody what is a successful project, there is a standard answer. Normally they'll tell you it has to be on schedule, it has to meet the integrity, it has to be within budget, it has to meet the HSE. This is traditionally what we used to, this 4 element. They say, oh, this is a successful project. In reality, in the oil and gas, this is not enough, because The most important thing in oil and gas when we are building oil and gas facilities and plants is to achieve the performance objective of the project. In my career, we did many times some projects where when we finished the project, a lot of change happened, and we end up not really, we are building a few $1 million facilities, which was not really meeting the requirement at the time of delivering the project. So we focus very much on achieving the performance, so it has to be part of the criteria where we should really select. Let's look at how can we achieve this objective to meet basically the criteria for the performance of the job. Of course, we have to have a very good and clear project definition, which is front-end engineering. We have to have a high quality, well-optimized engineering scope. We have to then the proper equipment selection.
When you talk about long-term contracts, the contractor will price some of the risk in that contract. And you're right, if there is a change in scope, there will be a change in or the claim submitted. However, one of the things that I've seen with reimbursable contracts is that there is one of the things I've seen with the reimbursable contracts is the contractor leaves the client is entitled to make a lot of changes. The contractor is basically the one who has the know-how, the knowledge, the ability to do the scope. Otherwise, the client will have not brought in a contractor to do it. So sometimes I've seen reimbursable contracts, clients making some unreasonable requests, and these being accommodated as part of the job. So I see some inefficiency in this. So how do you compare the efficiency to the risk that the contractors take, or the additional premium, as you say, if you award the EPC contract?
We, as you probably know, that we have the management of change process, and we apply this very strictly. So we don't allow any change without going through the management of change process. And management of change process will go all the way till the highest authority to authorize any change to the scope. So that's how we don't get this risk. We did a few $100 million job on reimbursed the part was few $100 million, and we end up actually below the budget because of that. So management of change is the answer.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. Not a question. As a second slide, I think we should add to achieve the performance of the objectiveness. We include the two aspects of quality assurance, and the quality control. Although you already listed it in slide 6, but I think it should be also in slide 2. In slide 5, you are talking about the fixed prices, most important, because of course to put all the risk on the contractor, so the client wanted to feel at ease. That's why that you said in slide 9 that it's had a lot of variations and claims and so on, which is the opposite that reimbursable we not usually see, because it put all the risk on the client, that it's your choice, not the contractor. So he wanted to pay money but feel rest because he is not specialized in project executions.
Yeah, I partially agree. That's why we don't go fully on business scheme reimbursable, we go fully lump sum. The part which is very clear, we know exactly that there is no variation, no change, is very crystal clear scope of work, we go lump sum. The part which definitely there will be changes, it's much cheaper to do reimbursable, because this part for the contractor, you put his highest risk money on this part. So you end up with more expensive price and most likely delay the order claims. That's why we do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Item pathways to a hydrogen market in 2050, posts and barriers. It will be presented by Dr. Hans Dieter. Let us welcome Dr. Hans.
There's a lot of project announcements, and I would like to zoom out a little bit and put this in relationship to the overall market development. And I would like actually to invite you to a small journey into the next decades, next 10, 20, 30 years, what can happen in this market and which potential it has, but also then putting us in the situation of, or in the scene of 2050, looking back, what did we do right to make this happen. And in this respect, I would like to share with you the cornerstones of this future market, where we have seen many projects being announced, pilot projects, but what will happen after that, what is the overall potential. And then also to have a look at Egypt's position in this market and projects in that region. And then finally conclude with boosting barriers, what are the impediments that we need to remove to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Thanks a lot for your interesting presentation. One question, how competitive is the green hydrogen compared to the blue hydrogen at the moment? And what do you think will happen in the future?
We talk about this cost, we talk about the levelized cost of hydrogen, of course, and in several regions it's already almost at par, which is directly connected to this very good solar and wind conditions, because then the electricity price, which is the highest part of the OPEX, is low. And on the way forward and the different colors of hydrogen, of course, green hydrogen takes a while, and I would say 10 to 15 years until really tangible volumes come into play. And we need to close the gap until then, so we will need any kind of decarbonized low carbon hydrogen. And every kind of hydrogen that is low carbon hydrogen and is placed in terms of the cost forecast, it is interesting to see that 2 years ago we were talking about in projects that are connected, let's say, to only wind energy, we were between $7 and $10 or euros per kilo. This is rocket high compared to $1 to $2 for gray hydrogen. Meanwhile, this is down to 3 and lower, which has to do with economics of scale, more projects coming into play, and also project developers identifying the sweet spots in the world where these projects can be developed. And from the project point of view, the only thing you need to focus on now is the levelized cost to bring that down, because as we have seen, the market demand is there. It's much higher than the supply available nowadays. The only problem is financing, when you don't finance the project on balance, but the project finance, so you have the bank behind. Of course, they need to see the real cash flow, the revenue stream, to be able to calculate the project and get financing, of course. This is a hurdle in the market right now, and this is why I mentioned these trading platforms being so important, because when there's a trading platform which is publicly supported, guaranteeing fixed prices, then at that moment you can calculate and you will get a loan from the bank for that. And as soon as the volume gets higher in the market, picks up more volumes, then there will be a forecastable hydrogen price, and then I would assume that project financing goes more easily.
We heard in the opening ceremony, they were talking about decarbonization of natural gas in order to making hydrogen. But I think it will be for Egypt, it's only for exporting, because we don't have the infrastructures, utilized resources to get use of hydrogen as a source for engines. We don't have engines that working with hydrogen. We don't have power stations that working with hydrogen. So it will be for exporting purpose, to maybe export it to Europe and so on. But the problem is that when you produce hydrogen from natural gas, what you will gonna do with the huge amount of CO2 that will be got as a byproduct? I think it's about 20% of production, or from the decarbonization process, it will be 20% of CO2. So you will have a huge amount of CO2. How we can use it? Some say that we can store it under depleted reservoir, or maybe saline aquifers and so on. So I think using decarbonization to produce hydrogen for Egypt, I think it's not a proper solution. And wind and solar, I think it's enough for us to make electricity directly. We don't need to transform it to hydrogen, then make it in electricity form.
Yeah, looking at this topic of how to bridge the gap, I think CCS is an important cornerstone in that, in the transition period. And there's different solutions that have to be looked at project by project, of course, how to store or what to do with the CO2. But it was an interesting aspect that you say we cannot make use of that in our own economy because we don't have the machinery for that. But in the current market situation, most countries take this to have a momentum to also have to decarbonize their own economy. Slowly starting, but I mean, if you're sitting on the new product, why should you not start pilot projects to use it in country also yourself? That is something maybe to consider or to discuss.
Yes, but it will be a huge amount of CO2. And if we made the purpose to export, we will export to Europe as an example, a clean energy for them as a hydrogen, and where we gonna put the CO2? A huge amount.
It's a huge amount, but it needs to be looked at project by project where to store this, because other projects are already also on the way where CCS is the feasible solution. It's maybe not for 100 years, but maybe for the next upcoming years. Maybe it's an interesting point to look into these projects. For example, in Scandinavia, they do it also in large amounts. So, of course, we can help to look at these projects. That's our main job to do. And I'm sure that there's always the solution project by project.
Thank you.